Do. All right, y'all. Okay, it is time. This is the challenge for, I don't know if my microphone is being heard right now. I changed my whole setup, so if the audio's bad, I severely apologize. Um, but yes, it is time to stream this God-forsaken challenge 4. Um, I mean business this time. Like, I'm not even, like, I don't even have, we're not even doing just the whole uh, desktop thing. I also have this really jank setup with my camera. So we're going to do some illustration purposes for drawing out like the HTML stuff. Um, that's kind of going to be what this video or this stream is specifically going over is the HTML layout. This is probably going to be a three-parter, not going to lie. Um, Maybe a two-parter. I might do the CSS and the JavaScript in one part, but for now we're just going to focus on the HTML layout of how we're going to do this quiz. I actually should have come a little bit more prepared because I wanted to get uh the criteria of the assignment um pulled up here, so I'm just going to do that now. So yeah, we're just gonna do the complete bare bones, bare minimum requirements that are needed for the quiz. And then if you want to go ahead and like do some fancy CSS styling or fancy JavaScript stuff like animating or whatever, then feel free. Um, but for the most part, we're not gonna do any styling and stuff like that. So, oh my gosh, it's all the way down here. Wish there was an easier way to access this. Maybe there is, and I'm just completely clueless. Okay, so let's just go over the criteria before anything else. So, as a coding bootcamp student, I want to take a timed quiz on JavaScript fundamentals. I'm pretty sure they said that doesn't have to be about that. That it can just be about anything you want. That stores high scores. I'm saying that three times fast. So that I can gauge, so that I can gouge my eyes out. So that I can gauge my progress compared to my peers. Um, Acceptance criteria. Given I am taking a code quiz, when I click a button, or when I click the start button, a timer starts, and I'm presented with a question. Okay, so this is like, this is already just hitting you with JavaScript, right? Like, the whole timer thing, that's gonna have its own place in the JavaScript. We're just gonna worry about the HTML. So we really just need to worry about like this mockup that they have here. Um, this is kind of just like the criteria for the functionality of the quiz. So then I'm presented with another question. I answer a question. When I answer a question correctly, the time is subtracted from the clock. When all questions are answered or the timer reaches 0, then the game is over. The game is over, I can save my initials and score. Okay. So, yeah, this is going to be what I'm basing the whole layout off of. So, the best analogy that I could come up with for thinking about how to structure this is kind of like a slideshow. Like if you're making a Windows slideshow or something, like each one of these uh categories of windows is like its own slide in a slideshow. Like here you have you had the intro, and now there's like this questions phase, right? And now each one of these questions wouldn't be like its own container. It would just be like one container, and then we would just kind of like generate in the content um in the JavaScript. And so this would be like its own phase, and then this all done screen is like the next phase. So that would be a different window, and then again a different window for the high scores. So let's go to the let's just draw that out. Draw that out real quick. Sorry, there was something in my throat. Get a drink of water. Okay. So let's take a look here at how we're gonna do this. Hopefully the camera stays in focus. So basically, uh, is it like, why is it pulsating? Okay. Hopefully that doesn't keep up. Um, so we're gonna start with our screen here. Now, the timer and the view high scores thing is actually, you know what, can I like do this? Can I mini window this, or do I have to do this? Sorry, please hold. Oh wait. Yeah, mini window can go above. There we go. If I do this. Oh. Actually, do I want to do that? Yeah, I'm just trying to be too fancy here. Well, anyway, yeah, I'm just trying to be too fancy. Let me. Well, never mind. Uh, okay. So we know that we're gonna have the uh timer up here and the view high scores thing up here. And the easiest way that I could think of arranging this is to make this like its own div. And I'll get to why it's a div in a second and not like a header. Um, so there's gonna be like this overarching kind of like wrapper div. So this would be like the screen. So this is like your actual screen. And then there's gonna be like this outer div that just completely wraps all of the content in. And the main purpose for this is honestly um like padding. So this is just to get like some padding between the screen border and the windows divs. Um so to kind of like scrunch it in a little bit more. That's kind of its main purpose, but also just so it makes it easier to like, you know, uh manipulate things as a whole rather than having to like change individual elements. Um, so yeah, so I made this a div, and these would be like, suppose this would be like a button. This would just be a any kind of text tag, like a p tag or something. Um, and then we have another div, which is going to be like the inner div. So this up here, this whole like top bar is kind of like, I'm just going to call it like top. Well, it's a div, but I'll call it like top bar. So you could also kind of think about it like a nav bar or something, I guess. Um, but not a header. That's the important part, is that I'm not making this the header. This is not going to be made with a header tag. So after that, I'm going to go ahead and make like another inner div. So like this whole thing right here, like this window right here is like the outer div. Um, and then we're going to have another div inside of this. Is going to be the inner div. I hope you can see that. Um, so this would be like inner div. And you don't have to do this exactly the way I'm doing it. I mean, there's no, like, this is just the easiest way that I thought about doing this. I mean, there might even be, there probably is, in fact, better or easier ways of doing this. But this is the easiest way that I could think of. So, now that we have this inner div, this is going to be like where all the main content goes. You could even maybe make this be like a main tag. Like you could just have, you could just make this be a main tag. Personally, I think I use the main tag for something else. But they don't, you're not discouraged in like making divs for containers. So like feel free to make as many divs to like section your HTML elements as needed. Uh, because that's actually encouraged from the research that I've done. So, okay. So now this inner div, its sole purpose is just to basically center everything because we want the screen, like we want everything to basically be in the middle of the screen. So you can do that in two ways. You could either like change the width of this inner div to be like 50%, so it's like this, and then you could set its margins equal to like auto, so it'll push itself like inwards. Um, or you could keep it like this and then give it like equal padding on both sides like that, so you're like pushing the content inside of its bounds inwards instead of pushing the bounds themselves inwards. Personally, I think when it comes to positioning, using padding or margin to position, you should always use margin. And the reason for that being um, is that if you have a container and you use padding to like say push it inwards, so like say you have 25% padding on both sides, and so all of your content is like in here, right? So that's one way to center it. But the hitbox for this container is still like the entire dimensions of the container. So even though like all of this padding stuff is invisible, like if you set a background to this object or to this container, like you would still see the background in these like invisible padding sections. Or if you had like some kind of click event on this container, you would still be able to click on these padded regions. Whereas if you did margins, the margins would actually like decrease the entire size of the bounds down to something like the borders down to something like this. And then like this would be like the space that your margins like pushed in, if that makes sense. So yeah, anyway, kind of a side tangent. Sorry about that. I also just woke up and there's like distracting things going on in my room, so I'm trying. um okay, yeah. So basic structure is we have an outer div, an inner div. We have this top bar div with the view high scores and the timer. And then we're gonna set the actually yeah. Yeah, the way that I did it was with this inner div, I went ahead and did the margin option. So I set the width of this inner div to 50, and then I did margin auto. What was that? Sorry, there was a noise. Um, so that this would look something like this. So then like something like that. You have those invisible borders there. So this is like this is margin auto for the left and right. So now I think this is pretty well set up to like put the rest of your stuff. Now, my header, so like everything else from now on is going to go within like this uh horizontally centered section of the screen. And this is where I put my header and my main and everything else. So all of this stuff is kind of just like setup for making like the slideshow appear in the center of the screen. Um, And so I'm still using that slideshow analogy because I think that's the best way of describing how this works. So the first thing you're going to be faced with in here is like the quiz intro thing, right? And since this is like the intro, I just made this be the header. And I think that's perfectly valid because if you think about it, it's kind of like pages in a book, right? Like, we're going to make this header disappear, but this header still contains all of the introductory information that corresponds to the rest of the content that's going to be on the web page. So, um, even though this isn't like up here, like this header isn't up here, I still think that this is the most appropriate uh like element role is to make this be the header. Um and another reason why I'm not making this top bar the header here is because there'd be no H1, right? Like based on the mockup, there's not going to be an H1. I mean, I guess you could. It doesn't have to be exactly like the mockup, but I'm sticking solely just to making it look like the mockup. Um, so there's no H1 that's going to be in this top bar here. You're only going to have this like extra information up here. It's not going to be like heading information. So yeah, that's another reason why I'm making the header be down here and not up there. So yeah, okay. So now we have something. If we zoom into this, we kind of have something that looks like this, and I'll get into the coding for all this like shortly. In fact, how long have I been ranting here? 16 minutes? Okay. Yeah, I'll hurry it up. Um, yeah, so this is like where all the main stuff goes, like the quiz. So this would be like where your start quiz button is. This would be like some welcome text or something. Oh my gosh, the screen is like pulsating again. Hold on a second. There we go. I have the most jank setup here, y'all. Like, it's not even funny. Like I literally have my webcam taped to a ruler that's protruding from my desk. Um, okay, well anyway. Yeah, so this is gonna be just the header. Now, we also want the main, like, the main structure I have here is like, header comes first, right? So we have header, close header, and then we're doing a main. Okay, so this whole header section is gonna be that element right there. Then we're gonna make that disappear once they click the start quiz button in the middle, that thing right there. And then the main section is going to essentially take the place of where that header was. So the main is gonna look just kind of like the header. It's gonna be the same. It's gonna basically be like a copy of this box, but it's gonna be invisible by default. So you see kind of how like we're gonna toggle between visibility. Like the header will start out being visible, and the main will be invisible. And then once we click that start button, we're gonna make the header invisible and then make the main visible. So let's just get into the coding because I don't know if this is doing anybody any favors. So we also have to start the project from scratch here. So let me go ahead and go back to the screen. Not the same mistake I made last stream. So yeah, so let's start with the GitHub side of things. So I'm gonna make an empty folder, call it um uh web is, and let's go ahead and start with taking this a repository and everything. So it. Go ahead and get the GitHub key, repository, new. I'm just gonna uh I have like 3 repositories named webquiz video, and that key. All right, cool. So, and we don't really have to do a git push yet. I guess we could to initiate it. I don't know if this is actually gonna have content in the folder. Dash U and okay, yeah, it's probably just we have no content here yet, so probably why we can't push it. That's fine. We'll get back to that later. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start with the index.html. So text document, text.html. I think that's all we're gonna. Let's just go ahead and make the other folders while we're at it. Why not? So, uh, setting it up. So you can do this like however you want. I kind of like setting up my folders where I have like all of my HTML files like just in the main directory, and like with the README, and then I have this resources folder that basically just contains like all the rest of the information about the project. So assets would be like images, audio, any kind of like external piece of information. Then I'd have like uh, a workspace folder, which is where I put all my code. So inside of here, I know it's a lot. Like it's, I have a very like meticulous way of doing this. Honestly, not healthy. This would be like where my JavaScript stuff goes. This would be where the CSS goes. Um, and yeah, I think that's all we need for now. Okay, so let's open this project up in code. And yeah, I guess I'll just drag this over here. Okay. So yeah, let's just try to do what I was going over on the piece of paper. So get all of the necessities set up first. Head, the body, like good stuff. I guess we can go ahead and slap a title on it while we're at it. Call it like web quiz. Also do the I always forget the meta tag for the like device compatibility, screen compatibility for like smaller devices. I think it's uh, name or viewport. Name equals port and content. You know what? I'm just gonna do this on Sublime. Copy and paste. This guy right here. All right, so meta tag for device compatibility, title. I guess we can go ahead and create and link the CSS. We are going to be doing a little bit of CSS, just not really styling. All the CSS is really going to come from the positioning and stuff. So call this like primary style. That's CSS. Cool. Link that up. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and put the title above everything. Link. Paste that. All right. Are in business. So I'm gonna split screen this. I'm gonna want to see some of the CSS while we're doing this. And actually, now would be a good time, I think, to do the mini window, right? Yeah. So this is gonna be where I'm gonna load the page. Open with live server here. I'll make that a little bit bigger. I don't know if this will probably get in the way eventually, so I'll adjust it accordingly. Okay. So, let's start with making that outer div first. So remember, like, kind of going back to what I was talking about, over here is like, we're gonna have this main outer div. So I think, we're gonna make that first. I don't think we really need to have a class name for it. I think we can just kind of have it there and then like add some padding. So try and do that. So div, actually I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a class name. Well, no, I'm not. Worry about that later. We have this outer div, and now we have we want to have that like top bar thing, like the bar that's gonna be the div that's gonna be at the very top with the timer and the view high scores button. That'll be another div. And I'm gonna go ahead and just comment these while I'm at it. In outer div. And the top bar. And then under the top bar section, we're gonna have the inner div. Inner div. And this is going to be like kind of what wraps the main content of the page. This is going to be like where the actual main tag is and all that stuff and the header. So yeah. Inside this is going to be header or the quiz intro. And then below the header is going to be the main. So main content. Alright, so before we go any further, let's just start adding stuff here to give a little bit of appearance to what we got. So, let's go ahead and just do the top bar first. Yeah, why not? Okay. So we know that we want to have a button in here. It'll be the view high scores button. Actually, I'm not really sure if this will be a button or like an... Yeah, this would be a button. I was going to say a button or an A tag, but we don't... I mean, you could probably make the view high scores thing. You could probably make this like an A tag, and then so when the user clicks on it, you could actually make them like make the web page bring them to another web page, which actually, like I literally just thought about that right now. That might actually be kind of easier. because then you don't have to worry about like changing everything on your current page. You can just make a separate web page for the high scores. That would actually be kind of cool, but I'm not gonna do that. We're just gonna stick to like everything that the criteria or the mock-up kind of shows. So yeah, button for view high scores, and then make a p tag timer, something like that. And if I run that, then I don't know if you guys can see that on the mini screen, but yeah, that works. Um, okay, let's go ahead and give these class names now, because I'm gonna start doing some CSS on them. So class equals, call this outer container. We'll go ahead and call top bar. And by the way, pretty much all of these main containers here, like the outer container, the top bar, the inner div, we're going to have to also access this stuff from the JavaScript. So we're also going to give these IDs later on. And I usually like making the IDs have the same name as the class name, so that it's not like I don't have to remember two different names for the same thing. Container. Um, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna call the header quiz pro. Alright, I think that's good for now. So, let's actually pop into the CSS real quick. And let's start doing some declarations here for position styling. So, how long is this stream, by the way? 30 minutes? Okay, that's not too bad. Okay. So let's target the outer container, and really the only thing that we're gonna do with the outer container so far is just give it some padding, so that like, as you can see right now, that this stuff isn't completely scrunched against the corners of the screen. I'm actually gonna do some global declarations real quick. And like at the beginning of all my CSS files, I basically have the same thing in the global declaration, which is like margin set to 0, padding set to 0, and box sizing the border box. To me, this is kind of like, what the default for CSS should be. So it gives you like a clean slate so that there's no like default padding and stuff getting in the way. And we're also gonna add the like wireframe debugging tool here. Border. So we can have the red borders to kind of view the bounds of all of our containers. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So let's target the outer container. And by the way, all of this stuff would probably be a lot easier with Bootstrap and jQuery. But since like the way that the pace of the course is going, ironically, it would actually take more time to go like skip ahead and then learn about jQuery and learn about Bootstrap, and then come back here and then apply it. In my opinion, if you're already like into the jQuery and Bootstrap, then I would probably integrate a lot of those techniques in this assignment. I am in no way advertising this stream and what I'm doing as like the best method, but it's the most like it's the simplest for where we are supposed to be at, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know if I made any sense. I guess another way of phrasing it is that I would rather use what I know to make the assignment than try to prolong doing the assignment by kind of jumping ahead when I have a very limited amount of time. I would definitely do the jQuery stuff and Bootstrap stuff if I had time to go back and look, but I process information too slowly to be able to absorb all of that in enough time to learn that and do this. Okay, so the padding is we're gonna give it an inner padding of like 10 pixels. Yeah, pixels is fine. Uh, Leave that alone for now. Let's change some of the top bar stuff. Um, you can do the top bar in a lot of ways. I personally, I think I gave it a constant height for mine, like a height of 50 pixels. But actually, I probably wouldn't do that either. I would probably just let the height of the top bar be whatever the content of what's inside of it is. So just give the let's just change like some of the text sizes of this stuff so that it'll like expand the width and the height of the top bar. Bar. Um, Background, nah. Okay, we'll just target the top bar button, I guess. Trying to think if there's like could probably define some defaults for buttons and p tags so we don't have to keep rewriting the same stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and do that actually. Oh, and also, uh, I'm gonna give the body a different background color because I do not like white background. Make it. I know I said I wasn't gonna do any styling, but like bare minimum, save my eyes from burning. Uh, okay. And then I'm gonna go ahead and say that p tags by default should be white. I'm also gonna put a default font in the body. I'm gonna make it monos and give p tags a default font size of 1 EM. Yeah, 1.3. Button will have I don't know, outline none, background color uh white, and EM as well. Oh, interesting. So the font family doesn't actually cascade down to buttons from a body. Okay, that's fine. Actually, what if I put that up here? Okay, it does do it if I put it up there. Order. Bugging. Alright. Oh, I just realized the mini screen was kind of blocking what I was doing. My bad. Well, okay, yeah, this is what I did. So I should probably close that when I'm not running stuff. Paddington. So now we don't really have to style the button that much. Um, we do want the button to be on the far left side and the timer to be on the far right side. So we could use flex boxes for that. We could even just use float. Like I think if I just say, if I literally just come down here and I target the timer, that would be the key tag. I said something like float right. Yeah, that works. So that looks like this when I do float right for the P tag. I just put that over here. I think I'm gonna do that instead of flex boxes. Flex boxes are great, but no. Solution is this simple. May as well just do it. Alright. So top bar is basically done for now. Um oh, you know what? Okay, so just another tip. Um Whenever you wanna like give something height CSS, it's rarely the easiest solution to just like give it like set the height property. Like if I came down here, like say that I wanted to make this top bar be a little bit taller, like its height be a little bit more, um then it's tempting to come down in here in the CSS and say like top bar height is like 100 pixels. It's tempting to do that, but that's rarely the best solution. Usually, um, in my experience, what you want to do is mostly use margin and padding to fine tune sizing and positioning. So whenever there's something that you just want to have a little bit like done in a little bit different of a way, I would like go ahead and just fine tune it with margin and padding. So what I could do here is instead of setting the height of this top bar div, I could just go ahead and add some margin um, to it, or I could add some margin to the content inside of it to expand it a little bit and like bloat it up. And the reason why that's typically the best solution is because it keeps it relative to it keeps the size still relative to the content that's within it. So, um, yeah, that's why I would typically use margin padding for like doing stuff like that. Like if you wanted to make this be a little bit taller. So I think what I'll do for that is probably just like add some margin to I add. I guess in this case it doesn't matter. Let me take the borders off real fast. Oh gosh, this is the button style. It doesn't matter. I promised myself I wouldn't do styling. I get distracted way too easy. No, I think that's fine. I don't think we have to do any additional stuff here to the height. I'm just not overcomplicate things. Okay, so these are like all the global declarations, by the way. all this stuff, and then we'll get into the specifics. And I should probably disable this mini window. My apologies, by the way, if I forget to do that a lot. I probably will. Like, uh, well, this is the outer container. I also find it really helpful if you like label in the CSS what you're going to be doing, um, so that you can kind of come back to it and fill it out like chapters. Up, bar. And then we know the next thing we're going to work on is the inner container, so I'm going to go ahead and make another section in my CSS for inner. How are we doing on time? 47. Inner container. Then have a section for header. Slash quiz code section. And then we're going to have all the main content come after that. So I'm also going to okay, and by the way, like literally everything else is going to be inside of the main tag once we're done with the header. The only thing on our web page that is like not going to be in the main tag is just this header right here. That's and the top bar. But everything else is going to be within the main. So like the actual question sections, the end of the quiz section, the high score section, all that's going to be in the main. So yeah, and I could actually go ahead and add a title for all those sections right now, but we'll just leave it as it is right now. So let's work on the header. So the inner div, okay, so right now, all of the divs, is this the right thing? Right now, all of the divs, you can see like all of the red lines are just right here at the top, so no div is taking up the entire width of the screen. Um, so we're gonna want to change that, and we want the entire outer container to like take up the full width, like all the full dimensions of the screen. And it already takes up the full width by default, so we just have to give it set height. Excuse me. And this is like one of the rare moments where we would actually go ahead and like set a height property. Um, and we're just gonna make the height be 100 view height. So for the outer container, height is gonna be 100 view height, which basically just says 100% of your screen's height. Um, so yeah, that's all that is. If I said 50 view height, then it would be 50% my screen's view height, and I would have right here. The view height is insanely. And by the way, it scales. So if I said like 50 view height, and then I were to like change the dimensions of my web page, you can see that like the 50% view height stays in proportion to whatever the actual screen height is. So it's also really good for responsiveness. Set that to be 100%. And then um let's work on the I guess just the inner container now. Like that. Container. And we also want the inner container to take up like full screen. But you also have to realize that like now the inner container is kind of like pushed downwards because of this top bar. So if we set the inner container's height to 100% of the view height, um, it would still like work. We could still do that, but it would be pushed down a little bit because of this top bar here. So we have to kind of think of a way to work around that. Um, I think what we could probably do is make it so that the inner div right here is just some percentage of the outer container. So that no matter what the outer container is, inner div will stay in proportion to that. I think we'll have to do some experimentation on that. Um, Actually, that should be a little. Okay. So let's also give this a background just so that we can see it a little bit better. Sort of black. And say that I do make the height. That even work? Well, okay, perfect. So yeah, you can see here like how it also kind of overflows. Like it'll prompt a scroll wheel for me because um this top bar is pushing down on this other div to the point where it's like actually going past the height of the screen. So fix that. This honestly might be one of those situations where we have to actually give the top bar some view height so that we can know how much we want to subtract off the bottom here. I did not think about that. How did I do it? Wait, I'm wondering if I made that same mistake. I did. So we have the outer div, top bar, the inner. Oh, you know what? I might have just ignored it now that I think about it. Yeah, I made the height 100 view height, and then I just disabled the overflow for the body, get rid of the scrolling. But if I go to the body and I give the overflow back, yeah, scrolling there. That's interesting. That's actually something that I didn't really consider. Huh. Interesting. Well, this is what you get when you stream. um, I guess if this has a set height, the outer div is a set height, then all of the container divs within the outer div should also have a set height, or else they're going to overflow from the main container. So I think what we have to do, I don't want to give the top bar a set. If there was a way that we could make it so that the top bar could define its own height based on the content that's inside of it, and then just make the inner div kind of conform to that, that would be really useful. Oh, you know what? We could actually use Flexbox here to like control the inner. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Could do that. So what would be Flexboxed? I think the outer container would be Flexboxed. That should keep everything like within the outer container. I think that's what I want to do. But so I say outer flex. Would want this to be flex direction column, and then justify content start. So we would want to justify all this stuff at the start of the page. Yep, that worked. That absolutely worked. So this way, the height of the inner div is still 100% of the outer div, but because we're using Flexbox, it's kind of wrapping or cutting off that overflow that would have otherwise happened where the inner div kind of flows out of outer div. So adding making this a Flexbox just keeps everything nice and tidy. Great. I have to update my assignment for that. Okay. Yep. Sounds good. All right, anyway, let's take the actually just give this capacity. Wait, no, I don't want to do that because then everything inside of it is going to have. There we go. So now it's slightly transparent. Okay, we're getting there. We are getting there. So now the inner container by like itself is gonna have um it's gonna be auto margined horizontally. So yeah, this is getting to the point um in the diagram where this is getting in the point in the diagram where we have this, right? So like this is now this inner div that we're working with, and we essentially want to set its width to be 50%, right? So it's going to be like half of that, So like this is now, just ignore that part. This is now the inner div, and then we want to push this to the center of the screen. And the way we can do that, well, we can do it in several ways. We could say, we could set its, margin equal to 0 auto, or we could make it, could we use Flexbox for that? I'm pretty sure there's probably some way we can use Flexbox for that. Yeah, we could do that. We could like do padding. There's a whole bunch of ways we do it. I think doing this is the best way. It's the easiest way. And it gives like the most scalable results. So, yeah, we're gonna set the width of the inner div to 50% and then kind of just push it in the middle. Inner container gonna be 50%, and the margin, I'm hoping. Okay, wait. I'm hoping that the margin actually works because this is inside of a Flexbox. It does. Okay. Great. Actually, a fan. Okay, if I take the borders off, by the way, so that we can get a status update, kind of what we got. I wish I could full screen this without, like, having to change this. Actually, wait, can I? You know what? I think I can. I'm gonna do that real quick. Hold on a sec. All right. OBS. What is it? Play capture. This will be capturing monitor. Yep. Now I can just toggle that when I want to do that. Awesome. Okay. All right. So now we want to actually fit the Viz screen in here. Also, I might want to add some more padding here. Up. Like padding between the top bar and the inner div. So this whole black screen right here now is the inner div. So this is going to be where like the rest of the content in our page goes, including the header and the main tag. Also, I'm going to use, you can see I kind of have this scroll bar here because there's some kind of like very small overflow, which is probably coming from padding. And if you want to disable that because it's just kind of annoying to have like that 1 centimeter scroll for no reason, you can go in the CSS and inside of body you can set overflow to hidden, and that'll get rid of that annoying scroll bar that we don't need. Actually, that scrolling might be coming from the borders. Actually, let me test that real quick. I take the overflow out and I disable the borders. Yeah, the overflow is just coming from that red border thing that I use, so that wouldn't even be in the final product anyway. But I'm still gonna keep it. Okay. Now 50% is still pretty wide. Let's just start adding some stuff to the header, because this is already an hour-long stream. So let's give the header an H1, right? And this is going to be like, welcome to this thing. And then there's going to be like a description. So like, get started with the quiz. Start. Let's also let's do another global declaration in the CSS. And just to make things easier to see, let's say that all H1 tags and H2 tags while we're at it. Let's set their color. Actually, you know what? Can we just put white, color white in the global thing? I think we should just do that. That should cascade all the way down, right? Oh my gosh. So if I put it in here, then I should here. Yeah, there we go. But now overwrite we'll say that headers should be like a yellowish color. I don't know. Yeah, that looks cool. Fine, and just to like maximize kind of what that looks like. So now where's my mouse? All headers will look like this, and regular text will just look like this. That's kind of cool. Okay. So now we want to actually enter the content in the header. How do we want to do that? Go back to the drawing board. This, there we go. Okay. So now this is our inner div. And we want to figure out how to center the header. Oh my god. And the header should be vertically centered as well. Right? So currently it takes up the full width. Like as you can see in the mini screen, like it takes up the full width right here, but we want to make it uh a little bit wider or taller, and then also in the middle of the inner div. So I think what we can do is if we'll make the inner div a flex box, because I'm pretty sure the only way that you can vertically align something is with a flex box. So if we make the inner div be here, I'll just write it out for my own reminder. So inner and this would be like display flex. And then we would want to do the whole, you know, flex direction is flex column. I don't even know if that's readable, but yeah. I don't know why the camera's focus is like pulsating. That's really annoying. I'm sorry about that, guys. Might have to, maybe I'll have to like wipe the screen or something. And now it's just gonna keep shaking. It's hanging from a ruler. um, Flex direction is column, and then we'll say, uh, justify content is center. And that should make it so that our main, or our header, or in fact, not just our header, but anything that's inside of the inner div will be centered vertically. Right, and this is really useful because this will also center the main tag as well, because the main tag is also inside of this inner div. It's just going to be invisible by default. So, so yeah. And then this would be our h1. So this is the header. This would be our h1 in the header, which is like, can't spell. Some kind of welcome message. Have some information about the quiz, and then the start button right there. That's kind of how the mockup sees it. Yeah. I think that's good. Okay. Let's go for it. Make the inner container be a flex box. So down here, play, set to flex direction, column, and justify content. And if I open this big screen up, you can see it does exactly that. So it actually now we kind of want the intro to be slightly above the center, and this may even look vertically off center. It's not, but it may look like it's off center because remember, we still have this top bar up here, which is pushing the entire inner div down a little bit. It's squashing it down vertically. Like if I made this top bar taller, you can see it's just kind of squishing it down, right? So that again. So we kind of want to account for that and push this up a little bit. And again, it goes back to the whole using margin and padding, mostly margin, to fine tune stuff. So like one thing that I could do here is like I could add some bottom margin to this header, and that'll actually like if I add bottom margin to this header, it will kind of count as its overall size. And so the justify content will be like, oh, okay, well, if it's actually a little bit taller, then that means that we should push it up a little bit more so that it stays, oh, excuse me, so that it stays perfectly in center. So if I went, let me go back to the code. I went here into the header. So now we're in the header section. I'll target the header. I called quiz intro. Then we could say like margin bottom is, and then whatever value. Now I would probably recommend not doing pixels. Like if I said bottom margin is 100 pixels, and I save that, you can see it does push it up. But if we were to like, um, if we were to scale this, right, you can see eventually like it'll kind of overlap with the I mean this is an extreme case, like we really don't have to worry about this. Um Actually, you know what? It's actually not that bad. Because it'll still try to stay center. I guess you could use pixels. I was gonna say use view height. Like if I came back into the code here and instead of margin bottom of 100 pixels, I could say like margin bottom like 10%. And this would be 10% of the screen height. Wait a second. Oh, it's 10% of the screen width. Oh, interesting. Okay, I learned something new. So if you put in a percentage for margin for anywhere in margin, I guess it defaults to the width of the screen, even though we're saying margin bottom, which is for vertical positioning. It calculates it based on the width. Okay. Well, either way, you could do something like 10 view height instead, which would be 10% of the screen's height. So then as you change the height, you can see that the overall size of the header, overall height, it also scales accordingly. Could do it that way as well. I think I would actually recommend doing it that way because if you add pixels uh, to the margin for height, then like you're kind of limiting yourself to. It's like you're just giving it some kind of hard-coded offset that can't change. Like it will always only be 100 pixels higher than it was before. Whereas if you give it a percentage, then it will stay 10% higher than where it was before. Probably, I'm going to use view height for that. Just do it. Like set it to whatever value you looks best. Get the responsiveness back here. Responsiveness off. Um, yeah, there might still be a better way to do that, but because the only problem with changing the view height to like just make the content inside of the header move up is you're taking up more real estate here, right? So like what if you wanted to have something below the header? You know what I mean? Then you couldn't because it would be down here. But I guess that wouldn't be, then you would just margin bottom of that. I don't know. I'm getting too ahead of myself. Um, this is fine for the purposes of the assignment. Or you know what? Maybe instead of putting the content inside of the inner container in the center, maybe we'll just put it at the start and then margin the top of it to push it down. That might be even better. So let's change this from margin bottom to margin top. And we're just going to push it down from, which means that we really don't even need the flexbox now. Comment that out. If I save this, pretty much have the effect that we want. So essentially what I'm doing is like, I'm turning this into, like I'm getting rid of the flexbox, and then I'm just adding some, I'm adding 25% view height margin to the top of the header so that it gets pushed down to like a height that I'm happy with. If I scale this, it'll stay in proportion. That's nice. The only downside is okay, yeah, we should still make it a flexbox because if this header had a lot more content in it, then it would kind of just like overflow past the screen. Like say for example, if I had more of these p tags, a lot more. Save this. See how it doesn't stay centered anymore? Because the only thing that we're using for offset is just that top margin. Um, but anyway, I'm just gonna move past this. There's a billion different ways that you can mess around with this. I'm gonna go back to the Flexbox solution because I just think it's generally the best. So yeah, and I think I'm gonna make this Flex Center. That gives me the best results. I'm gonna have to end the stream soon because I'm getting to that point where like I'm just kind of slowing down. But let's try to at least get some main content in here. For the most part, I'm just going to consider that this stream can be skippable for part one. Because this is an hour and a half long for just the CSS. So once we get past this, then I'll just say that like the JavaScript, more advanced CSS is like the hard stuff. Which it is. And what did I do? I feel like I didn't use 25% height for that. So for my header, Oh, that's right. Yeah, I gave them. I gave it a margin of 50 view height plus 50. I don't know why I did that. Okay. All right. Now we have to center all of the content in the header. So that'll be pretty easy. Um, Target the quiz intro h1. Just set the. And in fact, you know what? I just know that all of the headers that I'm going to use in this project are going to be text align center. So I'm going to go up here in the global declarations and just declare that. So I'm just going to say that all headers will also be text align center. And then we'll just say that the quiz intro p tag um, I gotta get some breakfast. And then of course there's going to be the start quiz button. And I think there was the trick to centering the start quiz button. Um, oh yeah. So by default, the like buttons are display inline. I'm pretty sure they're display inline. And so if you set them to display block, then you can like do the whole auto margin trick on them. So if I say dot quiz intro button, and I say display block, then you can see that it'll go from being like just cut off right here to now it takes up the full width. And now we can say that um now we can say what can we say? uh Say width is margin 0 auto. I mean we could, but that also changes the size of the button. What if we wanted to keep it at its size? How did I do that? I have to keep referencing my other assignment. Got how I. So for header button, oh, that's interesting. So it looks like I gave it um I did. That's not. Yeah, it's a constant size. So and I didn't flex box it. Oh, I guess it just. But see. Oh, I don't. Okay, we can just do margin auto. We don't need to give it a width. Go back to our example here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I don't know why that took me long to figure out. So yeah, if you just want the the button size to be based on the content that's inside of it, and then center it. Just do auto margin. Display block, auto margin will center a button. Moral of the story. Um, yes. Cool. And so that's basically phase one, right? So phase one is like the quiz intro header. So I'll go ahead and comment that, like, phase one. And then phase two is going to be down here in the main. Okay. Okay. Uh, Also, let's go ahead and give the header some horizontal margin so that it's not, even though this is 50% of the screen's width, it's still kind of wide. So let's say that the header quiz intro, let's say that we'll also give it some margin left and margin right. Let's say like that side. I feel like that's a lot. It's a lot, but that's not bad. Full screen this. Now what it looks like if we add 10% margins between the intro header and the inner div. Yeah, good. Yeah, and so don't forget that this red line right here is just because we uh we gave this header like this really big bottom margin, and so that's why it's kind of down there. Also, I think that might also be part of the main as well. Yeah. We haven't given the main any size yet, so main is just kind of chilling here. Um, let's work on the main part now. Okay, so main by default is going to be invisible. Alright, so come down here. Main by default be display none. And you'll see as soon as I like run this that this red line here will disappear because this is actually like the whole main element, except it just doesn't have any height, so it's just the width. So if I run this, let me get rid of that. Because now we've set its display to none. Also, another thing is that we want the main to have pretty much the same location on the screen as where the header is. So as soon as the header is like as soon as we click the start button and the header hides itself, then we want the main to basically take its place. And that'll be pretty simple to do. All we have to do is basically just give main the same properties as header. So if we scroll back up here to quiz intro, we could honestly probably just, yeah, we could just say like quiz intro and main will share these properties. All right, save that. Then, okay, let's go ahead and put some content in the main. So the first thing that'll pop up after the quiz intro is the questions section, right? That's when the questions will start, um, like going at it, and the timer starts and everything like that. So I'm gonna make this a section. And I'm gonna call the section question screen. Every question screen will have an H2, which is the question, title of the question. And then honestly, it can just be like an unordered list. Some LIs, buttons. Like that. Okay, so I'm just going to simulate what's going to happen here. If we take the border, red borders off, and let me screen this. Yeah, I'll full screen this. Okay, so here's our header. We could also give it a background, just to give it a more appealing look to it. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that right now. Actually, let me just show you what I'm going to do in CSS. So, since I'm saying that quiz intro and main share these properties, whatever I put in here is going to affect the main and the quiz intro. In this case, I want to give the main and the quiz intro both a background color, so this is perfectly acceptable to put it in here. So, background color, let's see, what would be um like actually do like a light gray. There we go. Not the prettiest, but it's at least visible. Okay, so let's go back to the main screen. So, this is our header. Our main should also look like this, because our main has the exact same properties as header, which is exactly what we want. So now if I go into the CSS, and all I'm going to do is just make the mains display, or I'm sorry, I'm going to set the header display to none. And then I'm going to set the main display to block, which is what the display is by default. So now we have the questions screen here. So this is already a great start. So I'm also just going to do some more styling to get the dots here for the list elements. Let's go back to the CSS. I'm just going to say for all list elements, do list style set to none. Is that off screen? I think that's style set to none. That gets rid of those annoying dots right there. Cool, yeah. And then, you know, we could pretty this up a little bit, but I'm not going to do for the purpose of time here. I'll probably honestly just get the skeleton for this in hopefully by the 2-hour mark, and then I'll do styling and everything like off screen for the next part of this video. That part doesn't really matter. Okay, another thing, so main is going to be display none by default. Header will be displayed. Another thing is that these top bar shouldn't be visible according to the mockup. I believe. According to the mockup. Oh, I guess they do have it visible. That's interesting. Okay, never mind. For some reason, I thought at the intro that these things were visible. I feel like, if anything, the top bar should actually go invisible when the quiz starts, except for the timer. Like, hide the view scores so that they can't exit the quiz until they're done with it, if that. But I'm not going to worry about that, because do that if you want to. So this is, the top bar is just always going to be visible. Okay, that actually saves quite a lot of time for this video and for the JavaScript. Great. Okay, so phase 1 is the questions. Phase 2 is the questions. Phase 3 is going to be what comes after the questions. And we're only going to have one questions container, so only one section for the questions, and then we're just going to completely generate all of these elements in here in the JavaScript. Or we'll keep the header, and we'll just change the header text, and we'll keep the UL, but we're going to generate all of these list elements right here with the buttons, which is actually going to be pretty simple to get into that. So that's actually something to look forward to, in my opinion. Alright, so what is phase 3? 3 is just another section, and this is going to be the end screen, or the finish screen. So I'll just call this the class is equal to quiz finish screen. And again, this is going to be invisible by default. So main is going to be invisible by default, but also all of the content inside of main should also be invisible by default. Because once we set header to hidden, and then we set main to visible, we don't want everything in the main to be visible. We want everything to be invisible, and then one at a time set them to like toggle their visibility as we go from one phase to the next. So like after quiz intro, main is going to be visible, and then question screen is going to be visible, but everything else is going to be invisible. So hopefully that makes sense. And then once we get to the quiz finish screen, then this will be visible and the question screen will be invisible. So it's kind of like yeah, I think you guys get it. Okay, so what is the finish screen gonna look like? Let's reference the mockup again. So yeah, go through all this crap. And okay, so that's what so it's just a message, final score they have is the recorded time, and okay, easy enough. So let's go ahead and so we're gonna make another category. So main quiz content, this is literally just affecting the main. And then this is gonna be question. And so here we're literally just targeting the question screen section. So we'll do that. Well, we don't really have to worry about that now because we're not going to style it. That's where we would, this is where we would style it. And the next one is finish screen. And we might do some styling here. So let's go ahead and set the quiz intro to display none. The main play block. And question screen be invisible by default. Well, everything in the main will be invisible by default. Did I spell that right? Oh, oops, that has a bracket inside of it. There we go. Okay, and then dot screen play block. Okay, so now we're working on the quiz finish screen, which looks pretty simple. It looks like they've just given it h2, like a p tag, and then a form, which may or may not even be a form. I don't think you have to use a form for this. So h2 finish. So I load that, or I run that, and then there. And then there'll be how much? Got 10 minutes before the 2 hour mark. Okay, I think we can do that. Your score. Um, and then it was okay. So they also had this like right here. I would like always wrap user input into a div, especially when you have a label. So that way, like if you want to flex it, to make it more responsive, then it just makes it a lot easier, and also it'll do a lot of the auto aligning for you. So in this case, you wouldn't really have to, because if you put a label and an input box and a button right next to each other, I'm pretty sure by default they'll just fall in line, same row. So if I do label, say like initials, input, type equals text, and a button right after that. Run this, yeah, it'll all be on the same line, but I would just still go ahead and wrap this in a div. Or a form. I guess it could be a form, but I really don't see the need for it to be a form. I don't know. Personally, I just don't really know what the difference between using a form and not a form is. Other than maybe like server applications, like if you're submitting a form to a server. But other than that, I don't really see the difference between doing it locally, uh, between using a form or like anything else. And that's not mentioned in the criteria, so I don't think it matters. So that's the quiz finished screen. You can style that as you want to, and then we get to phase 4. Which is going to be which is going to be the high scores screen, right? So once you click on the submit, so you put your initials in, you click on submit, and then it's going to bring you to the high scores screen where all of the high scores are recorded. So class is to scores screen. And here as well. And this, of course, will be invisible by default, but we're going to want to set it to visible so that we see what we're doing here. So I'm going to make the quiz finish screen visible, and we're going to set high score screens visible. Okay, and then this is going to have an H2, which will say high scores. This should probably be like ordered list. I honestly don't really know what the difference is between order. With ordered list and unordered. So the difference is that an ordered list will have its items ordered by number, whereas an unordered. Oh, okay. So there's literally no difference other than like that. But we're not using like the default styling, so I guess it really doesn't matter. Maybe for semantics, like for a semantic reason, because the scores might be ordered from like highest to lowest, so I guess we can use ordered list just like as a semantic. So anyway, then we'll have these list items in here, and the list items can just have text. So I'm assuming like, it'll be like initials and then followed by your score. So if you finish the quiz in 20 seconds, then it would look something like this. And my initials are WH, so this would be like WH, finish the quiz in 20 seconds. I run that, I have that right there. So let's just get a few example stuff. Also, let's just go ahead and leave a note to ourselves here saying like, this will be generated in JavaScript. So in the final, product, we're actually going to delete all this stuff, but we're just kind of keeping it here right now as a placeholder. So this will also be generated in the JavaScript. Yeah. So also, just another thing, this kind of goes into styling. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? Okay. Well, this is the last screen, so I'm going to go ahead and cover this anyway. We can actually, just like you can hide the scroll bar for like the main body of the page, you can actually add scroll bars to individual like elements. So if you want to make it so that like, like if you play your quiz a lot, eventually your scores are going to overflow out of your screen, right? So you can actually go into the CSS, and I'm going to target the high scores screen ordered list, and you can actually set the overflow to auto, I believe, or scroll, sorry. Set overflow to scroll, and if you give the ordered list a set height, then as soon as items start going past that set height, it'll trigger a scroll bar to allow you to actually scroll through all of it. So that's pretty cool. So just as an example, say that I want this to have a max height of like, I don't know, 200 pixels, why not? This means that once the height goes past 200 pixels, it'll just stay at 200 pixels. And so anything else that's being added to the screen will trigger the scroll bar to appear. So we can here, I think. Oh, and also, yeah, you see how there's like this bottom scroll bar too? Let me actually do this. This bottom scroll bar, incredibly ugly and annoying. Um, so you can actually go in the CSS, and instead of overflow set to scroll, you can do overflow Y set to scroll. And so this is saying like now only when the Y axis is being overflowed add the scroll bar, and so now it'll just appear on this part. If you don't want it to be there by default, then you could even add like a pseudo class, and you could say something like, what did you say? You could say like, my scores screen OL height equals and this will be like, this will essentially say that once the ordered list has reached a height of 200 pixels, now like apply these properties. And then this property could be like triggering the scroll to take effect. If I run this now, you'll see the scroll wheel isn't there, but if I keep adding items to this ordered list to the point where it gets past the size of 200 pixels, maybe that's not how that works. But yeah, so the max height was reached. Maybe that's because it actually doesn't register as 200 pixels. Yeah, because there's no height in here. Okay, that's kind of annoying. Well, you could use some kind of like property or pseudo class. This isn't a pseudo class. This is just like targeting the ordered list at a certain property. But probably do something to make it appear. I mean, as an example, I guess I could say like ordered list hover. Whenever I hover over it, it'll set the scroll wheel like that. So yeah, and you can mess around with that. We are now at the 2 hour mark pretty much. So I'm gonna go ahead and just leave it at that. Also, you are gonna have two buttons down here for going back to the quiz. This will bring you back to the start quiz screen, and then you'll have another button that will clear all of the high scores. So it'll look something like this. And that's really it. Honestly, that is really it for the HTML. I probably made this video way longer than it needed to be. But yeah. So it's really just about chopping like the whole thing into different phases. And then making sure it all stays organized. So yeah, I'm gonna call it there. But I hope this was helpful somewhat. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next stream. And the next stream is gonna be for the CSS and JavaScript. It's gonna be a long one, not gonna lie. It is gonna be a long stream because, or you know what? You know what? I'm just gonna do the styling off screen. All the positioning and stuff. Maybe I'll stream it, but I won't make it like a mandatory or like a stream that you have to see in order to like catch up with what I'm doing, because it's just, you can play with the styling all you want. But I'll still make it available how I messed with it. So yeah, I'm just double checking to see if there's anything else I should cover, but I don't think there is. So yep. That's that. Thank you guys for watching.